This video is to demonstrate how to remove a background from a photo using the free graphics editing software called Krita, K-R-I-T-A. That's available for Windows computers as well as Mac and Linux computers. I'm using a Linux computer now, so that will show you that it works really well on Linux computers and computers that aren't Windows. Remember, Paint.net is a great tool too, but it only works on Windows computers. So this is an alternative you can use for free. It's freely available to download and install on your own computer. And the address for that is going to be in the video. All right, so I'm going to launch Krita. And you will be familiar with the layout of the Krita environment. It is modeled after Photoshop and looks a lot like Paint.net also. Now I'm using a dark theme on my computer, so instead of the window area being white or off-white, it's a dark kind of a gray or brown. But otherwise, it looks pretty familiar. We have our menus across the top and some settings for tools across the top. We have our toolbar over here. We have our color swatch here and our layers palette here. And this area will have some tool options also depending on the tool we're using. So the first thing I'll do is open up a photo to edit. And I'm going to use a photo that I took of myself in my Halloween costume, which was Blackjack from School of Rock. So let's see. I believe it's this photo. Yeah, there it is. Okay. So I took this in front of a green screen so that I could easily remove the green area. But you'll see there are some harder parts here with the door frame and the pneumatic closing part for the door. And Krita makes it really easy to get this all cleaned up. So we're going to start out by using our rectangular selection tool and going around the borders far away from the part of the photo we want to keep, just to remove the area of the photo that is not green screen. So I'm going to draw a rectangle that will remove all of the top of the photo and hit delete. All right, and there we have the checkerboard that tells us that there are no pixels there. There's no color. The checkerboard means that it's like a see-through, like a window. All right, and now I can go to select, to deselect, and the dotted lines around the rectangle that I drew showing me what was selected disappear. Now I like to put a nice bright layer on the bottom so that the color shows through and I can see any little bits of things left behind that I want to get rid of really easily, because it provides a lot of contrast as opposed to the checkerboard. So I'm going to create a new layer by clicking this little plus button here, and you'll see now I have layer 2 and the thumbnail is the checkerboard telling me that it is transparent. It's just like a pane of glass. And I have layer 1, which has the thumbnail of my photo. So I'm going to rename these so that I can keep them separate just really easily. I'll call it Halloween photo for that layer, and I'll call this bright background. All right, and then I just need to move the background, the bright background layer underneath my photo. And to make that background have a color, I'm going to select a color from the color swatch up here, and I could make it any color, but I found that red, a real bright red, works pretty well. Yellow can be good too, but anyway, whatever your choice is fine, as long as it contrasts really well with whatever's in your photograph. So let's see, I've chosen the red. I'm going to go to the paint bucket. Make sure the background layer is active, otherwise you're going to be using the bucket on your photo instead of the background. And you can see the red appears in the part that I cut out with the rectangle, and that our thumbnail for the background is fully red, telling me that that entire layer has turned red. All right, now I'm going to continue to use the rectangular selection tool to cut away the parts of the photo that are far away from my face, my body. Oops, now see what I did? I did that on the background. I forgot to make my photo the active layer, and I cut out pixels from my red background, which is not what I wanted. So I'm going to undo that, and I'll just even undo the rectangle selection. Go back to my photo, make sure that's the active layer, and redo that selection. Okay, there we go. There we go. I can see there's just a little bit of a shadow there. So I'm going to remove that portion so that it doesn't leave any shadow behind later. And now I'm down to these little bits that are still a little bit of door frame right on the edges. And if I zoom in really close, I can work more easily with those. So there's a zoom slider down here in the corner that you can use, or the wheel of your mouse will zoom you in and out also. So I'm using my wheel right now. And with the rectangle tool, that's going to be easy to get. And then for this little wedge of color right here, I'm going to erase it. So go to the, in Krita, the way you would erase is go to the freehand brush tool and then click eraser mode up here. Okay, and you can just start, oh, you have to deselect first. Okay, and then I should be able to just start erasing. Now that circle shows me how big my paintbrush tip is, and if I want to do some fine detail, I can change the size here. That was a pretty big paintbrush tip, so I'm going to take it down. Yeah, that's pretty good. Around 15 pixels gets me real tied up against my jacket there, and I can just get that little bit of detail work. Okay, I'm just going to make it connect into this other red, and I'm not going to worry about this green. It'll come out really easily with another technique. So now I need to get this area here on my other shoulder. So I'm going to zoom into that area. And use my rectangular selection, make sure I'm on my photo, and this is big rectangle right there, big rectangle right there, and then I'll use my paintbrush for the rest. Select, deselect, and I'm going to make my paintbrush a little bit bigger for that area. Let's try around 20, 25, somewhere in there. If you find it's too big, you can always undo it and go back. There we go. That's pretty good. Now if I zoom out and look at my photo, alright, all I've got left is that green. So the way I can get a lot of that green right away is to use one of the magic wand color selection tools. So there's two in Krita. In paint.net, you might remember there was one and it had two different modes. In Krita, they just break it out into two different tools. So the contiguous selection tool will take an area that you click on and take that color and select everything that's close to that color and is touching the area you clicked on. So if I click out here in this green, it won't remove any of this green or anything, even if I set the matching really high, because that's a much darker shade. But so I'll click out here and you'll see, okay, if I were to delete that, you see it kind of makes a funny selection and it changes the pixels in a kind of funny way. So that can be used for doing real detail work on a photo like this, but I found that the other mode works better for this photo. So I'm going to deselect, And I'm going to use the other tool, which is called the Similar Color Selection tool. It's right next to the magic wand, and it looks like the dotted line for the selection, and then it has an eyedropper with it. Okay, if you go in and click some of that green, you see this setting over here, fuzziness? That is like a threshold setting. So how closely the other greens have to match is controlled by this. I don't know, 5 might be a little low. I'm going to go to 25. And if I select any of this green, it will then pick any green in the whole photo that's within this fuzziness range of color of what I click on. All right? And it doesn't matter if it's touching or not. All right, so I'm going to do it. And I can see my dotted line there has made a selection around the outside. That looks pretty good right there. I can see that the dotted lines go on that edge between the green and the red, along my shoulder, here along my hair, and that looks pretty darn good. I'm going to try it. Not bad. All right, and I can now deselect, and you know what? I'm pretty happy with that without doing any kind of fussy work on it. But I could, if I wanted to, zoom way in and get these little areas of green using the other magic wand for the contiguous selections. And I could go into areas like this where there's some highlights, and I could start taking out those little motes of green in the middle of my hair. And it could, you know, if I was doing a really important photo edit for a professional document or something, this could really make all the difference, right? This area really stands out as you zoom away, so maybe we'd use it to get in here. And again, there's some settings here to play with that control how much of the green has to match and so on. And I can fiddle and fuss with that for a while and clean up things, and the more I do, so long as I keep doing little details and I don't get too much selected outside of those areas, the sharper it's going to look in the end result. So I'll just show you a few examples of if I were going to spend a lot of time with this photo to make it look really great. This is the kind of detail work I would do. Okay. You know, there's some areas in here where the green stands out still, even when you're not zoomed in. So there we go. Maybe right in there. Alright, so that really does look pretty great. So now I can leave my background color if that's the way I want my image to appear in some document I'm going to be using it in, or on the web. I could take this out and leave it transparent so that only my face and my shoulders is what's in the photo. What we would do if we were just going to save it with the transparency so that in this case I was just cut out of any background, and when I put it into a document or onto a web page, whatever was already in the background would show instead of being covered up. I would go now to File and then Save As, and I've got to make sure first of all that I save it as a Krita file. See, Krita document, and that's going to be something or another .kra. That is how we save all of the work we've done with the layers and all that stuff, so that if we do need to edit it again for any reason, we can go right back to where we left off. So I'm going to say Halloween School of Rock Photo Demo. And then save. All right, and then I need to save it again in a format that is understood by other software. So in this case, I'm going to do export and then choose from the types of files PNG. PNG is a graphics file format that is very generic. It's understood in all kinds of software and on the web. and also supports transparency, supports having backgrounds cut out of things. So other kinds of formats like JPEGs don't support that, and they'll just fill in the background automatically, and you won't have that transparency if you use them. So we definitely want to use PNG, and it remembered my name, Halloween School of Rock Photo Demo.png, and I'll hit save. And here, this is critical. You have to make sure that Store Alpha Channel Transparency is checked. Okay, that's what will save it with the transparent property. If you have that unchecked, it's going to fill in the transparent part of the picture with whatever color is selected here. In this case, flamingo pink. All right, and if you wanted, you could change that to some other color and save it so that the background became that color. But that's not what we want. We want the transparency. So, and then this up here is a slider that helps you adjust for a small, fast loading file or a large file that's higher quality but a little bit slower to load. So I always save mine with the highest quality, and then if there's a problem with them being too slow to load, I can always come back and make them smaller. So I'm going to save it this way, and then I can go to my file browser just to take a look at the result, make sure it's what I wanted, and I'll go to downloads because that's where I saved it, and there it is right there. Halloween School of Rock Photo Demo.png, and you can see the checkerboard giving me the indication that that's all transparent. All right, now if I wanted to replace the background with something else, like let's say I wanted to actually put myself in the School of Rock band, okay, I just need to put another image as the layer underneath the Halloween photo layer. So I went and I found an image that I thought would work pretty well on the web and saved it, and I'll just open it up right now. It was School of Rock something or another. School of Rock Andrew Lloyd Webber, who is the composer who does Broadway musicals. All right, so there's Andrew Lloyd Webber, but the rest of this is the School of Rock band. Okay, and I want to rename this layer School of Rock Band. Okay, and you'll notice that it opened up in a whole new tab. Okay, so now in Krita I have two tabs open, two photos that I'm editing in Krita. One is me as Jack Black, and the other is the band. So how do I get them combined? One way I can do it is just to take this layer and drag it right out of the layers palette and then drop it into the layers palette here where I want it to be. And sometimes that doesn't seem to work, so I'm going to do it again. You can also usually just drop it into the canvas and that works, but then you have to rearrange the layers the way you want. So I want, if I do this right now, I can use the move tool to shift the photo of the band around, and I can use the transform tool to resize it. So I'm going to resize it. Hold down the shift key when you pull on those corners so that your photos stay in proportion and don't look all stretched and warped. Okay, but now the problem is that I'm underneath the band. All right, so I need to reorder these layers so that I'm appearing in front of the band. All right, and I can move myself around, and maybe I want it to be something along those lines, somewhere right in there, and I can even resize myself so that it looks just the way I want. Ooh, that's kind of funky. That's not what I want though. Okay. And voila. Now you see up here sometimes the progress bar will appear right here, and that's just rendering the photo to make it all look correct. Okay. Sometimes when that's happening, it'll disappear here for a few moments until it's done. All right, so there I am, frightened of the School of Rock band, or maybe I'm saying gotta live hardcore or something like that. Okay. And now I'm in my background that I want, and I can just then export that as a JPEG. Now this one doesn't have to be transparent. Oh, I'm going to say Halloween School of Rock photo with band demo and hit save. And I don't need this transparency checked in this case because there's no transparent parts on the photo, but it won't matter. So I can click OK and go back to my downloads folder, and there is my PNG right there. All right, so that's how to use Krita to edit a photo and remove the background and replace it with something else, or save it with transparency.